We're now live.
Okay.
Did you see the whole thing comes in and it's like,
Okay. We'll wait.
do you think the student is great? I do know, but
No. So you're ready to go? Are we going anyway?
Yep, I am going to share the
I tried to last year, cleaned them out for years, actually meant to. And when I cleared them, it seemed fresh, but getting there fine. So it wouldn't have been prior. If we didn't get much damage that causes all this, I think a lot of it is closer. We go right now, we go right across the whole province.
Right. Oh, I know, Paul. Paul must have gone out for a bit, but we'll start this workshop on the annual plan. Annual plan workshop number 1. I do have some apologies, just Eric, Roger, and Lyndall, and also actually Jeff did mention last week. I just remembered he wasn't going to be here. So someone remove those apologies. And Alistair, all in favour, say aye. Yeah, right. So we're into this, Patrick, and you're going to lead us through this. I'll hand it over to you.
Thank you. So we have put this presentation together, and we're working through the budget today, and this is in support of the annual plan process in conjunction with our colleagues at the back, Marcus and Hayley. So let's move straight into the next slide. Look, in terms of the budget, I've got a bit of a detailed walkthrough in the presentation, and we're looking for input and a bit of discussion. We've taken an extra step this year. We've got the budget to a baseline level with the current year's assumptions. What we've then done is we've engaged, or I've engaged with my GM colleagues, and we've sought to get the starting point for the rates increase as low as we possibly can without altering service coming into this workshop, so that we're presenting a number that's as low as we feel we should be starting with. We're looking to engage you as councillors in this workshop. We need to understand how much further you want to go, and what options you want us to use to get there. And we're looking to get you a final budget that meets your rate increase expectations. So that's what we're looking to achieve. Next slide. I'm conscious that we've got tables with numbers and they're not necessarily easily seen on the screen, so we've circulated copies for you to refer to as well. Hey, look, this first slide here, it sort of summarises where we're at. So the overall approach, we've sought to use budget accuracy and trim our budgeted line items without altering services to produce a rates increase that is as palatable as possible. If you start with the long-term plan, for the 26-27 year, there was a 12.6% increase in the long-term plan. When we put the initial budget together this year and baselined it, we got it to 10%. The extra step that I mentioned earlier gets our rates increase that's currently baked into the plan down to 5.6%. But there are a couple of things to call out, which we'll go through in the presentation. So first of all, there are 2 new initiatives that we're proposing to fund, and we're assuming that we'll reserve fund those. And I'll go through that further in the deck. Secondly, we've still got 290K to find to budget the balance at this level, to balance the budget at this level of 5.6%. But I'm reasonably confident we can find that, and I'll explain what's still to be done to find that. And then the final point I would make here is that every 1% decrease to the rates increase means we need to find another 315K. That's a good metric to sort of think about as we go through. So on this slide, what we're showing here is where things are currently at. So if you roll up all of our numbers for the 26-27 plan with a 5.6% rate increase baked in, we currently show a surplus of $4.9 million. But that's deceptive because we've got Kanoa grant money in here, which we have to recognise as revenue. So the Kanoa grant money is $6.1 million. That's in the second table. If you back that out, then we have a $1.2 million deficit. But we're proposing to fund $800,000 of initiatives through reserves. We've since found another $100,000 net saving in integrated catchment, and we've got the $290,000 still to find to balance our budget at 5.6%. So that's a summary of what we're going to step through. Next slide.
Sorry, just in regards to the deficit with the income over versus expenditure, when you take Kanoa funding out. Yeah, so the Kanoa funding, just to clarify, actually brings in $6 million, but we take that out of the, just looking at the negatives, the 4.9, 6.1, 1.2. That's just to clarify where the negatives and
yes, that's right. So what I've essentially shown you in this slide deck is what is the underlying budget of the Kanoa impact. Because if we include the Kanoa impact, everything gets quite distorted.
Well, clarification, has it actually got the Kanoa expenditure to do with the income, or that is there 40% actually in the budget?
Yeah, the work on Kanoa is
well, the money comes in, the $6 million comes in, that's 60%, isn't it? The grant. So there's 40% of expenses in the budget.
Yeah, so the way it's currently in the budget, the income comes in $6.1 million. So that's grant revenue. The expenditure is currently assumed to be capital works. So it's asset and it doesn't go into the P&L.
so just, I'm sorry, I'm just going through this, but the 19 million, the other income, is that inclusive of the Kanoa?
No, oh yes it is.
Yeah,
Yes. So
in the top,
yeah,
so
yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
so it's where the Kanoa, the 6 million sits.
Yeah, correct.
Okay.
All right. So we go to the next slide. So look, a couple of principles here. So the first is in getting to 5.6, we focused on budget accuracy and trying to get as much precision as we can. Historically, some of our other income has been unaccounted, and people expenses tend to be less than we plan for because our actual rate of vacancy is higher than we typically budget for. So we focused in on those categories. And we've done a deep dive by directorate. And when we look at contractors and consultants and other expenditure, we've identified less opportunities to reduce expenditure than we have in people costs. And we've identified some other question.
Well, just clarification then on that. So what you're saying is you've carried forward vacancies in the past that have had budget with them that haven't been filled, that have led to surplus. Is that what you're saying?
And contributed to a certain
yeah. So does that mean there's no vacancies being carried forward, or is there? It'd be interesting to know how many vacancies are being budgeted for to be filled. So you're saying there's none that you think might be filled in the year, is that what you're saying?
No, so what I'm saying is, and I'm just using sort of numbers to illustrate, so they may not be that.
Yeah.
If we had 220 FTE positions in the organisation.
Yeah.
Typically, when we've budgeted, we've assumed an 8% vacancy rate. So we've assumed that we're not going to fill 8% of those vacancies. The reality is that we have a higher actual vacancy rate than that. So we've identified an opportunity to get the budget more precise by saying in certain areas of our business, we're not going to fill our vacancies at an 8% vacancy rate. The actual vacancy rate is going to be higher than that, based on some modelling we've done, which I'll speak through later in the presentation.
For the public, if they're looking at this, I'm just going back to this 4.9, 6.1, just explain why they're actually positive, but you've got the most negatives. The negatives is positive.
Yeah, so
Accountancy is it?
that's accountancy, yeah.
It doesn't
So
mean anything to them.
The negative-
That's what the point. It looks like it's a negative, saying there's a deficit, but it's actually saying we've got a positive there. 4.9.
yeah, so that's accounting convention, negative is credit, and debit is a positive number. So
That's really clear.
They just- That's really clear, yeah, exactly. They just confuse us.
Those numbers, just saying that.
I wonder whether in future we could sort of have income in one column and expenditure in another, so we can sort of
yeah, or we could put a brief comment underneath to explain the
yeah. Well, let's talk about that.
Yeah,
offline,
that's
so
just- Oh, sorry.
Patrick, this probably isn't your area, but if we're going to reduce our science people cost by 200,000 and their consultancy costs, are we going to up the efficiency?
Elsa,
Sorry,
we haven't got onto that page. It's the next page. It'll be onto that page.
No, not quite there yet.
No.
this was his gains.
Oh, okay, yeah, but it explains in the next. I was saying
Yeah, but I'm
Yeah, no,
coming
no,
another
no.
way.
okay.
It's all right.
No.
Come back to the question when I-
The next page talks about that. So if you want to.
Yeah.
Is that
Yeah,
all right?
let me just finish this page here and then I'll come to the question. So look, so we're focused on getting the budget as precise as we can in terms of what we think the actual expenditure is going to be. And at this point, having an accurate budget doesn't mean we have to cut any service levels to reduce the rates increase. But when we talk about further cuts, then we will need to bring that into the conversation. Another principle we're maintaining conservatism with our investment income. So you will have noticed, particularly in the investment committee, that the income from our investments has been quite significant in the last couple of years. So, for example, in the first 6 months of this year, we've had a 10.6% return on our invested funds, which effectively is if it was repeated in the next 6 months, notwithstanding current international tensions, you'd be looking at circa 23% return on our investment. Our assumption, which we've carried over from previous years, is that we'll get 3.6% interest and dividend income, and we'll get 2% capital growth income. Now that assumption is going to be wrong because we're not seeking to predict what markets are going to do. We're either going to have another pretty good year tempered by current international events, or it could turn out to be less than we would like to see. So conservatism sort of suggests that we stick with a conservative middle of the road assumption on our income, and we don't try to second guess what markets are going to do.
Just in regards to that, when we set the LTP and what we are now with our managed funds, I know it's unrealised gains, but I think we're meant to be sitting at about 29 million as of this year. In the long-term plan, we're sitting at 38 million.
Yeah.
We've had some huge big gains. Now, nobody knows what's going to happen in the next 6 months globally, but there is a point in this when we're saying, oh, we'll take 1 million, 3% out. But when you look at the long-term plan budgets, even if you take a million out, we're 8 million ahead.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I'd be going, okay, it's probably just because of what the global markets have done, but is there a point saying, is that, I sort of challenge the SIPO, the 3%, when that money is there to, you know, it's part of the investments, it's a long-term thing, but the reality is I feel there's a bit more fat in the system.
Right.
To be able to bring back in for community good.
Yeah, we do cover that later in the slide.
To bring more in, or
to give you the option, that is one option.
there is still an option for that. Okay.
Yeah.
I just wanted everybody to know how far ahead we were in regards to where we were saying looking 3 years ago or 2 years ago.
Yeah.
So, no. Good. Paul?
I was going to raise the same thing. I just probably that you did raise it, Jeremy, because we are dealing with a situation where the costs aren't as bad as we thought. We do have a wee bit of leeway, so we could start utilising it.
Yeah, we'll raise that discussion further into the deck and give you feedback.
Of course, one way is that using the reserves, because effectively is taking money out of the investment committee portfolio.
Hey, look, the second point here, we took a paper to the investment committee to say, look, the SIPO policy says we'll withdraw 3% of our dividend and interest income and use it to fund our operating activities. That's the policy. Hasn't previously been enacted that way. The dividend and interest income has been reinvested back into the fund. So that's part of the reason why the fund is growing to the extent that it is. The paper we took to the investment committee said, look, we are seeking to make the budget more accurate this year, more precise and aligned to what we think actual expenditure will be. But it does mean there's less margin for error. So we are proposing to enact this year, withdraw the money, use it to cash fund our operating activities. I just wanted to call that out.
Yep.
Hey, look, the last thing on this slide, we're proposing to fund 2 initiatives from reserves. We believe there's a valid case in each of those cases to do that, and you'll see some more detail on that as we get further in. Right. Savings from directorates. So I'm going to step through the approach that we took, and Rob suggested to me that you might like to see the detail of this. So I've got a worked example. I've used my colleague Hayley's directorate, but I'll just step through the process that we follow. And we'll get to your questions, Alistair, on this deck as well, on this slide as well. So look, what we did, this extra step, we took the plan numbers, and then we took the year-to-date actuals that we've incurred this year, the income and expense that we've realised this year. We doubled those, we uplifted them for 3% underlying inflation assumption for next year, and built a comparative. And what that enabled us to do at a high level is to say, what does the plan look like? What would our situation look like if this year was repeated next year with next year's inflation numbers built into it? How do they compare? Are there things that we should look at in more detail? So that modelling was done just at a high level, just to enable us to drill a bit deeper into our budgets. This provided an initial basis for comparison, and then we did a deep dive directorate by directorate. So then when we identified opportunities, we discussed those and agreed them at a directorate GM level. And we've identified circa $1.2 million of opportunities where we can make the budget more realistic, which means we can reduce how much we're increasing the rates by, and that realistic budget should unfold as next year progresses. The main opportunities that we found is that a reduction in a modest reduction in people costs in science, 200K, a modest reduction in science consultancy costs, 200K. We found 450K of revenue, enforcement related revenue, which we believe is real and will occur that's not currently in the plan that we can add in 450K. And we found 3 FTE for strategy and regulation that we feel comfortable won't turn up as real cost next year. And the total of that is 1.2 million. So those are with the main opportunities we identified came from. Next slide.
Sorry, Alistair, do you want
Oh, sorry, yes.
a question around that?
It's not going to work here because all I'm saying is that it would probably be better to come up in the fees and charges thing, I think,
Okay.
because of the cost and then relation, and then you're going to get another 450,000 out of enforcement revenue. Yeah, just leave me in the meantime.
Just
I will bounce back.
Yes, Chair. Patrick, just in regards to science reduced consultancy costs, so here, just a question regarding where are those costs incurred in the first place?
So I've got Karen, are you able to help me with that?
So through Chair, through the recent recruitment, we have been securing some very senior and very excellent scientists. And so through that, and I guess through that lift in that space, those reductions are work that we should be able to do internally, where we probably before would have gone external to secure that support. So I guess it's not necessarily a single project. There's a bit of savings across the board reflecting greater internal capacity.
Thank you.
Does capacity mean efficiency?
We're always working at being more efficient. But this is
people. This is people. This is actual having that resource to do it.
Yeah.
Efficiency is how effective we are doing it. This capacity.
Well, if we reduce numbers and we get the same result, we're more efficient.
Absolutely, we're doing both. Super. She's amazing.
Thanks, Karen.
I've just got one question there too, just in regards, reduce people, either 3 FTEs. In the consenting part, we're sort of told there's quite a vacancies for a number, but we're not. Hayley, is that
I had the same conversation, Chair.
right? I was just saying, are we replaced, and obviously consenting is quite a public discussion at the moment, just in, are we filling those, or are we actually saying, that it was up to 40% vacancy?
Yes, through you, Chair. Yes, that's
Are they
correct.
3 of
So,
those, or are they, or just trying to understand?
with respect to what will happen with the volume and complexity of consenting under the new regime, is obviously a timing element that won't occur in this annual plan term and likely for the next one either. So Patrick and I spoke last night about undertaking at the right time a workflow analysis with respect to resourcing and the changes we can expect in the expertise and number of people we need in the consenting space. As I said previously, we are running the consenting team at a 40% vacancy rate at this time. We are also using a consultant pool who are technically competent and understand Southland and our issues and concerns and what we wanted to achieve. So we use that at this time. We are working to understand what those changes will mean, but the way in which we're operating is to ensure that we have that agility once we understand what the nature of the work will be and when under the new regime. There has been some additional workload created by the recent amendments to the RMA, such as the consent expiry rollover. That has created additional work in the team, and also with consent holders reaching out to amend, vary or get new consents as well to get that 10 years of clear water and certainty through this change. So it's a fairly complex picture with respect to resourcing within consenting and is evolving as we know more about what the implications of that new system is. that sort of
Yeah,
doesn't
yeah.
answer the question, but does answer the question.
Doesn't give me any numbers,
Jen.
but I understand where
It
you're
doesn't.
coming from.
MEF have calculated the numbers as being around, I think, 29% for regional councils,
Yeah,
plus or minus
yeah.
4%. However, that was a very specific methodology that looked at a raising of the threshold around the assessment of effects, and also taking into account permitted activity baseline. So it doesn't look at the implications of regional spatial planning. It didn't look at limit setting and the implications for that on eventual regional combined plans, which I would argue are just as, if not more important, with respect to what will require consent and the nature and complexity of those consent requirements. Additionally, the new regime proposes a more permitted activities, but that there is a administrative regime around that, which is new. It's suggesting that people will be required to notify us. We will be required to undertake an assessment to determine whether it is a permitted activity. So I do see a potential need for consenting officers to participate in that process, that assurance process, if you will. There is also a flow-on effect as well under consent monitoring. Obviously, we have a team that monitor consents as a requirement of those conditions. There will be a requirement for permitted activity monitoring in the new regime. So I wish I could give you a straight answer, Councillor McPhail, but I can't at this time.
The agricultural sector understands there could actually be more activity on their farms than the new regime. Certainly come to a fore. David, yeah, thanks.
Yes, Jeremy. Yeah, Hayley, this thing about increased enforcement revenue, is that coming from having to look at some of those permitted things and having costs involved in the new stop bank rules and
Through you, Chair, I'll let my colleague answer that one. Okay.
So it's not increased revenue, it's revenue we've identified. We've always had, it wasn't in the plan, so we put it back in the plan. So it's our underlying enforcement revenue that we bring from year to year is what's measured in the plan.
where was it previously, Patrick?
So it was missing from our 26-27 plan, and we've put it back in. So that's essentially where what's it.
It wasn't accounted for.
No, it was a gap. So our deep dive analysis identified that it was a gap, so we put it up.
Yeah, clarify that.
All things.
That's interesting. In the past,
Used to.
we went through a phase of actually recognising this in the budgets. It's a bit challenging because we don't actually know what.
Yeah, absolutely.
So this year we've decided to, it makes sense to recognise that we're likely to get in the order of this amount of money, so we put it in the budget. Is that fair? Yeah, correct.
Disappeared the last few years. And back.
Gene, can I ask a couple of questions
Yes,
on that
yeah,
one?
yeah, sorry.
Does that take an average over the last 10 years of that enforcement revenue, or is that based on a single year snapshot reflecting the recent set of rules and likely discrepancies and adherence to those?
So we've looked at the 24-25 actual enforcement revenue, and we've looked at the year-to-date actuals for 25-26 to assess what should go back in.
So I guess my second question is in noting that there is potential risk associated with that approach, because it could suggest that 6 months into the financial year, you go, shit, we're running behind schedule, let's get out there and do a bunch more enforcement and find some people breaking rules to generate a bit more revenue. Is that a risk that we want to flag that we don't want to drive perverse income, perverse behaviour as a result of that assumption?
Through you, Chair, if I may, I'd like to very clearly and emphatically say that will not be the case. This process has had no impact on our already in motion monitoring and other types of compliance monitoring enforcement work programs. So I would emphatically say no to that.
So I mean, if we fell $200,000 short,
We're not going to use it as a lever to achieve our budget. We're putting it in because the reality is it's going to be earned, it is going to turn up as income, but we're not using it as a lever. If we find that we're running a burst budget, it's not a lever we're going to pull in. We actively seek to get more revenue.
just thinking about it, it'd be good, you'll have a figure the last so many years. There's a risk.
We'll be able to find a figure,
Figure.
so we could do
Just-
some work on that.
Just to confirm all that's one.
Yeah, we could do that.
Business as usual, what
Well,
happens
you'll see
itself.
that in the slide. deck.
Yeah, okay.
Yes. If I may just say one
Yeah.
last thing, I mean, I think to the chair's point, that's an important one because of course we do adapt our compliance approach when things happen, such as, you know, unusually wet spring or winter. Historically, within that 10-year period, decisions have been taken to pause activity in specific areas. For example, after the severe wind event, we stopped some monitoring activities. In that period, if we had been undertaking business as usual, we may have noticed some breaches that may have required, under our policies, cost recovery. That obviously didn't occur. We didn't then go out and double down our effort to get back up to that level. So I think a better look back on what the actuals have been is prudent because it will capture unusual events that do cause us to stop those activities out of respect of what's happening within certain sectors in Southland, and we don't then double down and catch up or anything.
No, thanks for that. Well, move on.
All right, so, and sticking with the directorate by directorate review, when we looked at community and engagement, we did a deep dive there. We didn't see any opportunities that would enable us to make budget work and reduce the overall rates increase. We did identify one opportunity where we could be more realistic with cost, but we identified an offsetting expense that hadn't made its way into the budget, so that netted out. When we looked at catchment, they have a tight budget, integrated catchment. We did identify a net 100K item that we can put into the budget on the accuracy thing, and that's captured further on. And we haven't got to the corporate services CEO office governance and risk yet. I'm about to start stepping through that, and I'm reasonably confident that we can find some accuracy opportunities in there as well. So look, what I've done here is just step you through the review approach that we used. I've used strategy and regulation as the working example. So our starting point, we started with a high level comparison. So in the table on the left-hand side, you can see the plan numbers as they were baselined with the starting assumptions built in. You can see the extrapolation on the right-hand side, and we dived into where there were large variances. So the first point, the extrapolation isn't a good comparative to other income because other income is lumpy and there's typically a bias of billing it in the first 6 months of the year. So if you use first 6 months of the year as an indication of the full year, you don't get an accurate view. So we've done some other benchmarking for other income, which I'll step through in the next slide. However, the extrapolation is really useful for people, contractor costs, operational expenditure. It's by extrapolating what the year looks like and uplifting it for inflation, it gives us a view of what next year would look like if it was similar to this year, and it's a good comparator that we can compare what's in the plan. So with strategy and regulation, it looked like there are opportunities in other income and in people, contractors and expenditure, what's in the plan, what's within Kuria, what we need. And the support costs are internal charges, they net out at organisational levels, so we haven't drilled into those. Next slide. So for other income, what we did is we looked at the actual other income that was in the 24-25 year. We used that as the benchmark. We compared that to what was in the 26-27 plan. And the column on the far right is a calculated column where absolute differences, so anything more than 70k or less than negative 70k is dropped into that column. And then we went through line by line and had a conversation between Katie and myself to see what was going on. So we felt comfortable with the consents and processing income. We felt comfortable that coastal and marine income is dropping away for good reasons, and there's a deliberate calculation behind that. But we did highlight the prosecutions, recoveries, enforcement, and admin monitoring, which is the 450k that we've been talking about. And that then generated a conversation about putting that income back in, because it's currently not budgeted for in 26-27, but the reality is we do those activities, the income is going to turn up. So that was the other income. If we move to the next slide, for the people costs, we did another benchmark. So we took the extrapolation of our year-to-date people costs. In this case, we uplifted them for a 5.5% inflation assumption, which is the budget's assumption. And then we compared that to what's currently in the 26-27 plan. And if you look at the variance extrapolation to plan column, you can see a 509k difference between those two numbers. So essentially what that says is an extrapolation of our current people costs, we're at the run rate of people costs we have this year, next year with next year's inflation assumptions, we're budgeting 509k more than we need. So that was the starting point. Then we looked at the payroll numbers and the FTE numbers. And essentially what we concluded was we're running at 50 FTE in strategy and regulation. We have planned for 55 FTE next year. We feel fairly safe that we can plan for 52 FTE. And that means a saving of 3 FTE. And when you take the income and the superannuation associated with 3 FTE, that's where the 350k saving has come from. So that was our process that we stepped through to say, look, we feel pretty comfortable that if we plan to have 52 FTE, that's what's actually going to turn up. Okay, so that was the process. Now, look, the next slide, just changing gears a little bit. There are 2 new investments that are proposed in this budget.
Sorry, any questions around the FDs? I'll just have a quick one. I'm just trying to absorb it all as we go.
No.
Well, new restructure, and there was obviously, have we gone to more FTEs in the restructure, and also there was obviously indication that this was going to be almost cost neutral in regards to that when we were going through that. Is that not, or looking at your books now and looking, we're a year into it?
My understanding, and I'll caveat this by saying I may not be 100% correct, but my understanding was the full restructure process resulted in about 2 net new FTE is what I think I've seen in previous papers.
Right.
That's and as far as I'm aware, that's consistent with the current headcount numbers that we're working on.
And we could come back to you on that. Just
it's always a question, public, but also we've asked, we're at times saying, how many people actually work here? There's always a figure 200, but are we talking 220 now? Well, you know.
Yes. So I'll come back and confirm because I'm not 100% on that. But my other understanding is that our establishment FTE is about 220, and our current vacancies are in the order of 35-ish. So those are the numbers as I understand them.
So you have 220, no, or it's 220 minus 35.
So the actual number of people in the organisation currently would be the establishment number of 220 minus the 5-ish vacancies.
That's all good. Sorry, David.
Yeah, look, following on from your theme about FTAs, I just noticed if you go back to the original budget, first page, there's 11.2 million in contractors and consultants. I guess I am aware that contractors and consultants come in at a substantially larger cost, and I guess that's what Karen was saying, when you employ them in-house. So how much of a deep dive was done to say, we'd better have some of these people in-house than to be paying contractors' fees? And I'm thinking of things like Kanoa. I mean, it's a big thing going forward. It's going to be happening for a while. A substantial amount going in contractors' fees, I believe. But can you enlighten me on that sort of process and what the thinking is?
Jump in, Patrick, and you can come in. Sorry, yeah. Yeah, look, certainly there's consultants in Kanoa. We are working really hard at actually getting the right people and recruiting. It's a challenging area, but we are really keen that we have full-time equivalents, our own people in there. But we also need to get the job done in the meantime.
Yep.
And so we're juggling that, if you like. We're employing consultants as we can recruit, and I think Lucy's doing pretty well at the moment. With that, we are replacing them with our own people, with salaried staff.
What sort of savings could there be, given it's 11.2 million? It's quite a chunk, isn't it, compared to the staff cost?
And look, I guess we've also got recognising that across the business, not so much, I think, in the Kanoa area where things are more secure, but in the uncertain times, yes, we're using consultants to an extent because we can't always recruit the right people. And also in some of the areas like science and other areas, and even in some of the planning space, we do need some specialist help at times. So where we can get, and it makes sense to have our own staff, we're doing that. Where it's challenging or not, we're using consultants. I'm not sure that's quite answering your question, but and Patrick and
yeah, look, my comments are probably fairly general, but particularly in integrated catchment and related to the Kanoa work, but also to some extent in other areas where we just can't find the people, there have been some decisions made to incur contractor costs to ensure that we can stand up and run programs. Kanoa is a good example of that. In our governance and risk area, we've got a huge number of vacancies, and Amy is bringing on some part-time contractors just to make sure she can run programs like the risk program and so on. Clearly it's beneficial to us to be successful in recruitment, because to the extent that we're successful in recruitment, we can put permanent resources in and they're cheaper than using contractors, and that's our intention, and that's what we're working to. It's just a question of how successful we're being in that. In Kanoa, there's some reasonable success. So Lucy is just in the process of recruiting a program manager for Kanoa, and her success in doing that will mean that we can dial back some of the consultant spend securing that area.
Okay, Alistair.
Amy was going to come back to us with those figures of staff a week ago, but we haven't seen anything yet of how many that we have.
Yep.
And what the vacancy difference was, but she'll come back shortly.
we'll do that.
We'll take an action and have a chat.
Thank you.
Okay. So new investment, which is my place. So new investments. So hey, look, there are two new investments that are part of this budget that we're proposing. So the first is the freshwater farm plan for FTE and circa 515k funding needed for the program. What we're proposing to fund this from the land sustainability accumulated surplus that currently has a balance of $1.6 million, and we believe that's a robust and permissible use of that reserve. And I'll just,
Yep.
the purpose of this is not new per se, this is activity that has been occurring, but funding is required to continue the program. And what we would propose is that you would see a business case and the funding of this from the reserve would be subject to business case.
Is there government funding on that?
Government funding's run out, as I
It expires, doesn't it?
So,
Yeah.
we, again, a couple of years ago, we were, I think it was Land Sustainability Reserve, and someone will be able to help me here. Biosecurity, Biodiversity Reserve.
There's two reserves.
There were two reserves
two.
that were gonna get thrown in general rates, but we're gonna use half them. I'm just trying to work out how that's built up so much from a couple of years ago.
Okay.
Or has it been used? I'm just looking for answers.
Can we come back to you on that?
Yeah, because it seems quite a high figure, and I don't know why it hasn't been getting used.
Right. No,
We're rating against it, and we're funding thrown into a reserve, but it's actually not actually going out. I don't disagree with what you're doing here, but that there was meant to be going down, so with money going. I was just wondering about, has there been government funding coming in that we still haven't used, but that's actually out of the rates been going, just accumulating there.
let me come back to you on where the income that went into the reserve came.
And it'll be the other reserve. It'll be written in the last long-term plan.
Just to clarify, my understanding is this is an existing capability, but it's funded currently by MFE funding, which expires at the end of the financial year.
That's what I understand.
I guess a question, and this doesn't necessarily affect my personal view, but I'm just going to flag that there may be some in the community who ask the question, should this service be one that the council funds, or is this an industry requirement in order to secure a social license to continue farming under the current policy of the central government? And therefore, should we let industry and a market-driven response respond to this need in the industry? And you might argue that would be responsible from a South and GDP perspective, because I would argue that if it was a market-driven response, there will be consultants emerge and businesses emerge who support the delivery of support, consultancy and advice to people wanting to do farm plans. Whereas if we do it, maybe there still will be a partial market response to complement depending on, what our capacity is. And some might argue if we were to focus on core business of regulation, monitoring, enforcement, providing advice and support services to rural businesses isn't a core function of local government. So I just want to flag that that's a logical perspective that some might take on this particular question. And I think it's important for us to understand as a council, when we make a decision, is it appropriate for us to be leaning into this, or would this be something that central government might call not core business for a regulator in the environmental space?
Anybody want to answer? Staff?
Can we let the discussion go and
Okay.
I'll come back?
I got it. Alistair, John, then Mark.
I support Phil 100% because it's really like the regulator is giving the advice and then we're going to maybe ping them if it doesn't happen. It's like bankers at the moment won't do budgets because that then puts them in a responsible position. So I think what you're saying, Phil, is the way it should go, and the industry sorts itself out, gets going. Take the risk away from us.
I'm supporting this discussion. I think the thing that I do want to flag is I don't want to see the market influence of farm plans because currently it'll just focus on emissions, not water quality. And I think the NESA discussion with Fonterra is a classic example of if we let markets determine how our farm plans look, it'll be the detriment of our water quality because it'll be linked to product out the gate, not to accumulated emissions on farm per hectare. So there's just something I want to flag as to however it's framed, that it's not, we're not sort of saying, well, the market's paying for the markets can structure it. So just flag that.
Mark.
Well, I support Phil and Al and John as well. We really can't be seen to be doing the job of private private consultants who have a relationship with a farmer to develop their farm. If it's something that, sort of like John was saying, what I understand him to be saying is that we provide advice on what farm plans ought to be achieving. In that sense, I mean, I wouldn't like us to be doing farm plans for individual farmers. I hope that's probably not the case anyway. So I do think we have to be very careful in this area. As what Phil says, there are a lot of people who say, no, we shouldn't be providing rates from one sector of the community to support another sector of the community. That's not right.
I've got a question just around the land sustainable. I know this is freshwater farm plans, but are you just specifically talking about freshwater farm plans or land sustainability team?
My understanding is that we've got an existing team who are providing support to farmers wanting to develop freshwater farm plans, and this is a continuation of that.
Yeah.
And maybe just to caveat, my personal sense is that arguably this might be justifiable. I think it is justifiable on the basis that, one, we've got an existing team that we don't want to see that existing capability disperse like a smoke screen dispersing the strong wind, and we lose it totally. I would argue that this be viewed as a transition support investment, that we're helping our regional farmers transition to a future steady state. But I'd probably caveat that we need to make sure we understand what is the end state for our investment in this program, because I wouldn't see this as being a perpetual capability that we sustain, but something that we help clear the initial bow wave of need for farm plans and then step back and let steady state be managed by industry level engagement, acknowledging that there remains uncertainty over this requirement based on central government policy.
That's a good point. Sorry.
Yeah, can I come in? Yeah, and look, I think the intent is to support the preparation of farm environment plans in Southland. So 4 people aren't going to be able to do all the farm plans in Southland, this farm environment plans. So this is around supporting. I'm in the process of asking Sam for a bit more detail on the business case, and I think we can do a bit more work on this to shape up some clarity around that transition, and also noting that we've got a lot of work to do in ICM, and I'm keen that land team has a part of this. I think we're all going to be, we need some resource in this area. It's not going to be all of us. We need thriving. We need as many FTEs as we can in this space, and so we'll get some more information about what is. So how might this serve as a transition towards?
Just to add, I think these individuals will also support improved intelligence, if you like, or information for us, because they will provide a source of eyes and ears on the ground during this transition to a new regime. So I see it as an important transition capability, but not a permanent necessary capability that we hold.
I've got John, then I'm myself. Paul or David, did you have your finger up?
Yeah.
No, John first, sorry.
Yeah, thanks. So I just want to add, just a probably consideration we need to make around how this is structured. You know, there has been, I guess, some flag concerns about the land sus team helping with wintering plans, and then we hear compliance coming in behind and find problems this winter. So we just need to make sure we're not creating the same problem how we structure this, because much to Al's point. So that's just something I really want to flag, because it could do us far more damage than coming out with a bit of a blunt message around how this is going to be financed.
David, and then Paul.
I guess it's interesting in the next year, because we're talking about the next year here. Farm plans could be pushed back. It looks like they will be. And I've heard a lot of people say how simple they're going to be. You'll be able to do it yourself. So yeah, I'm a bit on the fence, but I'm thinking absolutely maybe that helps drive them to be simple if there's not people rushing around trying to make them complex because they've got a job. I mean, let's get these things as simple as we can, and we may not have the onrush in the next year as well. So, because all those pieces of the puzzle aren't out there at the moment. The Appendix N and that, even some exemptions.
Thank you, Chair. From my investigation on the website with regards to examples of farm plans and also connection with the team, farmers need to connect with the team for information on slope, on ground type, all those other things to be included within the farm plans. I think there's a lot of information there from ES. So even if it's out into consultants, if a farmer decides that they can't do it, which is clear, and they use a consultant, the consultant's still probably going to get a hold of our team to ask for the information with regards to ground type, waterways, slope, and mapping example. And the example that's online for a farm plan is actually quite good. So yeah, it's we will be included no matter what. Even if farmers want farm plans, consultants want to do the farm plans, the team that are there will be busy anyway.
And
Yeah, I think-
someone's got a bit of echo there. No, good. Can we, and look, we are looking to make as much information as possible available on our website so that people can access a whole lot of information around slope and all those details. But I think at least initially there's going to be a need to actually support the preparation of these. I'm pretty clear that farm plans of some sort, what they need to be more than a tick box exercise in my personal view, are going to be required, and they probably will need some support to get them into so they are useful and to do the job of helping manage our land water system.
My question, is there potential for the ministry to extend the current funding support? Or is that absolutely certain that it's going to be cut?
As we understand it, there isn't any opportunity for further funding.
The only comment I've got is that I always believed we had never invested enough into the land sustainable team as part of the team, and I take it that it is still encompassed. They're obviously just dealing with freshwater farm plans, but they are still part of a large team that's on the ground.
It's a transition.
So, and I think it's great to have people on the ground. I do understand about the investment. I think industry we probably do a lot more and look after ourselves. And I understand Phil's position in regards to why we're investing, and that's where they should be sorting it out themselves. So, but I'm still looking at this as a larger part of having people that can fill these positions within that organisation. So you don't want to lose good people that are actually doing good things too. And it's also engagement. I mean, just talking with farmers, keeping them on. It's not just about farm plans. It's actually just providing the information or the intelligence. Intelligence is quite the right word to use when you're talking about situational awareness. It's still another avenue on the ground, talking with people that can have good effect on our environmental outcomes. So
we'll come back with a bit more detail around that.
Well, I was going to suggest, do you want to see a business case?
I think we need to do a business case, and we'll come back to them proposed.
Okay. Shall I move on to?
Yes.
Yeah.
Right.
Hey, look,
Alistair, you weren't looking at me.
No.
No, that's all good. I was just thinking, I'm looking down, I'm looking at the notes. No. Miss you, Al.
Right.
Yeah.
Hey, look, the other initiative that we are proposing is invested in, subject to business case, is the financial management information system FMIS upgrade, needing 450k, proposing to fund 300 of that from a digital transformation reserve. The purpose of it is to address support risks with our existing software, modernise, be future change ready, and address what we do risks in our accountability processes. And this would be subject to a business case. The business case is being worked on and is going to be put forward for endorsement at the 27th of May Finance and Performance Committee meeting before going to Council.
Okay, any questions regarding that?
Thank you, Chair. So just the one point, Patrick, it indicates here potentially that there's going to be changes around the audit framework. Is that?
No, what I'm calling out here is we're yet to do an internal audit on our accounts payable processes. But we're envisaging that an internal audit is going to throw up gaps because we do, for example, manual purchase order creation and so on, and good practice would require us to get electronic purchase order.
Can I just ask, is there still more money in the digital transformation reserve?
Yes.
Because it was quite a lot set aside at that stage.
So it's currently got circa 650k in it, of which we need 350k to fund next year's Iris Next Gen contribution.
Right. So you're using what you've got, and you just need a bit extra, basically. Right. Phil, sorry.
On this particular initiative, is there a fixed sort of time span over which this will be realised? Does it run beyond a single financial year, or can it be knocked out within the space of a 6-month window? How does that sort of
The implementation itself?
Yeah.
Assuming approval of the business case, we would be seeking to implement the new EPIS within the financial year from July 26 to 30 June. There may be a separate phase to implement the payables capability, but the core financials would be in the financial year.
And is this, I'm just thinking of the various reform proposals that are out there. If an amalgamation of some form occurred, this wouldn't be a wasted investment. This will support us.
Would be complementary to, and we'll articulate that very clearly in the business case.
Okay. Can we tick that one off? Yep, all good.
Okay, so next slide. Hey, look, next slide basically takes us back to where we started, which is to say rates increase is currently sitting at 5.6%. That generates a deficit of 1.2, proposing to fund 815k out of reserves. We've identified a further 100 saving, still 289,000 yet to find to balance the budget at 5.6. But we believe we can get there. So then the next question is, what are our opportunities to find more? So we've put some ideas on the slide, and we'll step through those quickly. So first of all, I'm still to do a review of corporate services, the Office of the CE, and governance and risk. I'm rolling those all up as if they were a single directorate. I believe I can find that 290k to balance the budget of 5.6 from there. If we want to go further, then we've got the option of taking a closer look at our reserves. We need to align the purpose with the expenditure when it comes to the reserves, but we do believe opportunities exist. For example, the biosecurity accumulated surplus, we believe we could find opportunities to spend that and reduce operating expenditure accordingly.
Do you know what that number is?
No, I don't, sorry, but I will.
That's the other one I was talking about. A couple of years ago.
No, we'll come back to the details. It's in the surplus, yeah. In the reserve, sorry. Another option is we could leave the budget unbalanced because we've accumulated good retained earnings historically. Or we could look through and reassess the assumptions in the investment portfolio, but I don't recommend that we do that. I think we have to maintain conservatism with that. So those are some opportunities. The alternative, of course, is, if we go to the next slide, I'll step through that. So that kind of leads on to the question, is 5.6% acceptable? Where do you want to get the rates increase for this year to? For example, do you want to get to 4.9%, in which case we'd need to find another 200K. There's a question, are you comfortable with us exploring further uses of reserves to fund further reductions? On the one hand, that's probably quite an easy option because our managed fund is about $2.5 million higher than the reserves that are cash backs currently. Partly because historically we've reinvested dividend and interest income back into the fund. But there is an opportunity cost if we use some of that accumulated income. The opportunity cost is that potentially we should be considering putting a further reserve in place that protects us somewhat from the possibility of loss of future income, either from the port or from the portfolio, or a combination of those. So if our income didn't occur from those sources in the future year, we'd want to continue to run the organisation without having to have large rates increase to offset that. However, because of where the fund currently is, I think we could balance some modest use of the fund to reduce rates in the current year and start to build some of that thinking about an income reserve as well. The other option, obviously, is we could reduce services and take some tangible costs out of the business, and in which case we'd need to work out where our low priority areas are and what we want to explore. So that's kind of what I think is the discussion that's generated from the slides that we've been through.
A couple of questions, Sean and
Just acknowledging this annual plan, but a question we had in our last LTP was getting our reserves policies tidied up, so we didn't keep bringing up the discussion of how we're going to spend our reserves. I think that we never really got there, did we, with that process? And I think it'd be quite helpful for your role and for efficiency of the council if you could maybe try and address it this LTP. Would that be a fair request?
Yes, I think that is a fair request. We've kicked off a piece of work from the investment committee for Scott and I to have a deep dive into the reserves, understand them and start to document them. So there is a piece of work that's kicking off to do that, but I think it's a fair view.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, just going back to, we're all looking for savings, and just going back to with regards to the Kanoa funding, Lucy's looking for a project manager at the moment, and we're looking at, we've talked about procurement over the last few years and everything else, and there seems to be a wee bit of a push at the moment through local government or through central government that organisations look at processes within their procurement that stop fraud, if you know what I mean, because there is a lot of that around here, and there's a feeling that there's a lot of inflated invoices and a lot of processes that businesses go through to consume the money that we collect from Kanoa, we collect from ratepayers, and we then have a responsibility to make sure that we have someone in place, whether it be this part of the new project manager, that they look at the procurement fraud side of it to try and save money, which will hopefully lower rates and everything else. So it'll be good. I know we talk about procurement, and we talk about the idea that sometimes when a big job comes in through a regional authority, that some businesses go, oh, we might just put another O on. So we need to be really sure that we are getting value for money and we're not getting frauded.
I can respond to that if you like.
Yep.
So look, we have a dedicated procurement manager now. We hired her late or circa September last year. So one of her priority areas has been the Kanoa procurement. So she's done quite a bit of work to tidy up the historic procurement that was needed to complete the tranches of Kanoa that that are still being worked through. But she's also putting a robust procurement strategy around the future kanoa procurement, and that's going to have the CE's signature on it. That strategy is ensuring that we use the government electronic tender service process, that we do a robust procurement, that we have quantity surveying in terms of testing what we're procuring, and that we're as robust as possible in terms of being clear on what the responses to the tenders look like.
And thank you for that, Patrick. Just because it's highlighted here that there's a webinar today that's passed through the Serious Fraud Office for organisations to sit in and find out. That could be something that you could extend towards the new procurement person, so that they make sure that they are getting all the information they can in regards to protecting this organisation and our ratepayers from any sort of overcharging or other forms, whether it be kickback or whatever, that during that process of procurement that we do get frauded.
Okay.
So it'd be good just to keep an eye on the Serious Fraud Office as well.
Cool.
Morris?
Just looking back at that previous slide about opportunities to find more, have we looked at getting more revenue from our lease lands? Is that has been part of the process? And we've sort of got workshops and stuff on that coming up. But,
So it's a good question, Morris. What we've got coming up with the investment committee is a workshop where we can start to ask the question, are there opportunities in things like solar, wind, and carbon credits? Do we have the opportunity to either JV or become entrepreneurial and use the land? Right now, we don't have any formulated ideas. The intention is that the workshop enables the investment committee to direct us about the opportunities they want us to explore. But as of right now, there's nothing.
but there are opportunities there, aren't there?
I suspect that potentially there are, depending on how much appetite we have for risk and investment. So,
Thank you.
I would say just for you guys, and you brought up lease land, even I think in today's budgets, this opportunity we probably still spend too much on. Personally, we need to sit down. Some of us need to sit down if you want to sit down, and go through some of that, because we do have a maximum 25% allowed to spend. That's part of the policy we've put together around the lease land. 20%, 25% of the income's been going up, and I think the time so I see we've been spending 24.5 and things like that. So on the information I've received in regards to that, so I don't know why we're actually spending that much on some of that land. I mean, there should be a policy around houses and doing maintenance, but seems to be still an effort to spend. I mean, sometimes I think it's probably there probably could be a bit towards your cause, and if we did look at those lease land, even today's budget. But anyway, Alistair, was it?
Yeah, I sit right with you on the lease land thing, because it's, in my view, the contracts you've got are not appropriate at the moment. The other thing that I want to make a couple of comments on. One, I believe that we should sit and leave, if we go to 4.9% or whatever it is, 500,000 sitting out, and we follow it right through the year, either monthly or bi-monthly. But it's all simple that it comes to us, and then we can make changes as it goes. But we understand where the money's coming in and where it's going out, which has been sort of a failure in the past 3 years that I've been here, at least.
You mean? Sorry.
No. Sorry.
Just to clarify what you're saying, Alistair, if I'm understanding correctly, you mean potentially leave the budget imbalanced, and then how the actuals turn up against the budget over the course of the year?
Yep. Knowing that we can make a decision and get some money out of reserve somewhere, but just keep the pressure on.
Yeah, thanks, Jeremy. Yeah, I'd like to see it below 5. And it's just a number, but also some more information around Kanoa and how much it's costing us being capital. Well, I guess in the debt side of it, because we're funding that debt. I'm not sure that I can say hand on heart that there's no sacred cows, because I sort of haven't got a GM by GM profile of staffing and things they do, the vehicle policy, we have had it, and I just forget it. So, you know, in other businesses, you look at your capital replacements and things and go, are we overdoing that? I guess even on things like science, how much science do we do? Is there an opportunity to outsource some of it? You know, those discussions really as a point, because I think the social license to have something over 5 is not there, given the discussion about local government reorganisation. I think we're going to put a really strong effort into getting the rate rise down. And the no sacred cows thing, I'd like to think that we've had a fair debate about all of those areas, and at the moment I don't feel we have.
Morris.
Yeah, well, actually, no, I was going to come to that. That page is 5.6 acceptable? Do we want to get down to 5? Noting that on a urban rate, I know that rural rates are higher, but an urban rate of $500, 5% is 25. So you're $25 over a year is, you know, that is much. So percentages, I know we've talked about this before, percentages, everybody gets picked on percentages, but let's also think about, you know, the real cost as well. So I think 5.6 is acceptable. There's still a bit of money to be found in that. You know, the more we drop it down below there, it's more difficult to do that, and more risk of reducing our services. So that's my view on that, on the percentage.
No, all good. I was just going to add, just in general, we're not getting as much information as we have had in the past. From myself, we used to delve down a bit. I mean, I know there was always a discussion how deep do we want to see it. Some of us were like to see a bit more. Just so, I mean, and even looking at lease land budgets, we should be looking at that. You know, the vehicles discussion, depreciation, what's in the depreciation, how we work. I know we've got a policy around that, but I know there's always been quite a large reserve there for depreciation on the vehicles, and we never seem to. At one stage, we said, well, we should be using a bit more of that. Seems to be a bit more. But one question I was: are we working off the end of the year figures this year? You know, base. You know, we're still halfway through our position to set our base rate. Our increase is based on our position at the end of this year, or is it based off?
Yeah.
I'm just last year. I'm just saying what actuals, and we've got actuals and forecasts. Let's take it. Yeah, I'm just trying to say where's the it's going to get added on to.
Yeah, it's going to get added on to the actual rates income that we had this
financial year.
Yeah.
So, but we don't know where. Are we rolling over? Are we going to have surpluses this year? I take it'll be in the retained unrealised gains will be a big chunk of it. But from the point of day-to-day business as usual, are we going to be carrying stuff forward as we seem to do every year?
Yeah.
Is there much of a figure? That's what I'm saying. Just trying to understand, are we getting the work done, or is it saying that, oh, well, we've got these 2 million, or I don't know the number, where we're going to be where we're going to be at the end.
Right.
So I'm just trying to guess how much is going into the budgets from this year.
So
if you know what I'm talking about,
I know what you mean, yeah.
What do we do with the surplus? The departments haven't used it.
It essentially goes into retained earnings.
Yeah. So And but we're rating on that work's gonna get done and also the new amount of work. This is what we do sometimes have a problem in the council. You always have this, seem to rate, and then we realise we actually haven't spent all the money.
Right.
And then it carries on to the next lot, and we rate on that, the increase, bang it on that year. And you go, but we didn't use that rated money. And I'm just challenging it, we bit from just to make sure we've got the right numbers we're basing the 5% on.
Yeah, so I guess my response to that, so first of all, the 5.6% increase is calculated from the actual rates take that we'll have this year. So that's the baseline that the increase will come from. The budget accuracy exercise that we stepped through is intended to address what you're saying here, so that we don't rate at a level that's higher than we need. We're rating as accurately as possible in terms of what we need to incur in terms of expenditure. In terms of the detail, apologies, I haven't seen the previous packs that have been put to you. And we've focused on sort of taking the reduction in the rate increase to the next level in terms of what we put forward to you, but happy to supply more detail if that's what you need to see.
Someone in the financial system will have that. We actually got a huge list of, I don't know, there might have been 20 different where the still got spread. And you can see the adjustments that's going up and down. It was really down to say there's a borrower schools, what it costs. So it must be in their system something. And it was just gives us that detailing and well, there's the adjustments and bits and pieces to each. I don't know whether it was last year or the year before. It was one of the
Chair, I know in the LGP years, in the work for LGP goes into quite a bit of detail. Why don't we, perhaps myself and Patrick work with you on what that information might look like?
I just thought I'd
that's good. That's great.
Because going back to rate increases, still come back to the investment portfolio. It's done exceptionally well. And you were indicating that, was there a $2.5 million figure here somewhere?
Yeah, correct.
That we're over and above. For us to say, we need to find another 300,000 to, well, you find your 300,000, make it balance. And then if you wanted to go down, need another 200, there's $500,000. We're sitting at 2.5 million. They wouldn't even make a dent. They don't just show, we're doing the best we can, we're bringing a wee bit of that, and we are bringing a bit in it, but I think it's also rewarding the community when things go well, that give a bit, there's a bit of icing on the cake there at the moment.
Yeah.
I know the investment committee might have a wee difference of opinion, but I'm actually looking from a community going, why are you hanging on to all this money? So it's just to get that balance when we have some good years, give a wee bit more.
My response, or this is just my personal opinion, my response to that is I think to get to the 5.6% balanced, I think we can find the remaining 290k we need to internally without taking reserves. I think that the delta between the value of the managed fund and the cash back reserves that is there to cover is about $2.5 million. And I think we can achieve both of the things that I think the investment committee might like to see and you might like to see. So I think we could fund 200k and get to 4.9%. That is what you wanted us to do, the surplus in the managed fund. And I think we could formulaically start a process to have an additional reserve that backs us in case we lose the majority of our investment income in the coming years.
So do we have a general reserve? We did talk about creating one of those and we're going to start filling it up.
I believe there's one there.
There is one?
Okay.
We need to spend a wee bit of time on the reserves just to get our heads back around what was actually sort of talked about and where we're at now. Ian?
Yeah, so here, just Patrick, I suppose my thoughts are that, probably to Al's point, as we operate through the year, it'd be good to keep some tension in the budget, because that actually nothing creates a better outcome than keeping tension. But also to Jeremy's point, that if we get to a point that we can't realise the opportunities around cost reductions, we've got a platform to use reserves where necessary. But that tension, I think, is really critical, and keeping it, from our perspective, if we get to have some oversight as we go through the year, that's true.
Good, good.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
You go first.
So I was just going to observe, thank you, Peter. It seems like a really disciplined presentation you've given to us today. I do acknowledge that there's certain rhythms that we adhere to within the local government space, and business as usual, steady as she goes, is very good for us. It allows us to exploit efficiencies, but I would just flag that we've had quite a geopolitical shock in the last fortnight with what's happening in the Gulf states. And there could yet be quite an escalation in costs for businesses, households, and even Environment Southland in the 12 to 18 months ahead. And I guess there's different ways that could play out, and we can't always predict in what ways there's going to be winners and losers within that. Maybe our investment portfolio excels under these conditions. Maybe there's headwinds that we perhaps couldn't anticipate. So I guess what I'm suggesting is, with this geopolitical volatility playing out and the shock that's delivered, we may want to remain prudent and disciplined. There's going to be part of our rates increase that will be attributed to the normal inflationary pressures that everyone faces. That additional part at the moment, I know you've flagged 2 initiatives funded from reserves. The information one's going to be temporary. That's a one-off thing to put us into a new steady state. And we've discussed that there's a transition dimension to the farm planning thing. But the other big part of that increase over and above inflationary costs is, of course, our co-investment in flood infrastructure, making good on perhaps underinvestment that's occurred in the last 3 or 4 decades since that was initiated. And I think that would be the key thing we need to keep in the forefront of people's minds if we're challenged on, if we're going to persist with a 5.6% increase, understand that that's a co-investment with government in our resilience for the future, and then future generations will benefit from that. So that's just an observation on understanding and being able to explain where the different slices of the increase might be attributed to. If we're going to tap, I guess when I say if there's a risk that we tap into reserves deeper, you might find actually those reserves are potentially quite important to us in the next 18 months as this geopolitical shock plays out across the country and the globe.
Well, thank you, Chair. Look, we look forward to what our next year's rates increases will be. I'm constantly looking back at the decades that we've had increases in, and I've been an advocate for 0 rates increase for, and stupidly people say that I'm doing that, but at the end of the day, rates are a bit like fuel. They go up, but they really, really come down. And our ratepayers clearly tell us they don't like the way we spend their rates, just the same as taxpayers clearly tell political parties they don't like the way they spend their tax dollars. We're always going to be fighting that. I do like the fact of getting it under 5, but operationally, in the last regime, I was talking about making sure, I'm hearing conversation about asking if we have this in place, and your reply is, yes, we do, but I have to, in the last regime, I was asking for more clear coding within the organisation, because it's money. We need to know where every dollar is. We need to include every dollar as a prisoner. Even though the government has given us a timeline 0 rates to be 29, the public expectation is it's now. So we've got to look at that as well. And looking at the current geopolitical situation, there's always something, there's always COVID, there's always spray chemicals going up, there's always something going up, no matter what. But inherently, councils are going up well ahead of inflation. So once again, I'll probably ask for 0 rates increase, and I'll probably have eyes rolled at me. But at the end of the day, we've got to look back at how much it's gone up. You know, some councillors based their campaign on this, close to me, about inflated increases. So I'm happy to keep harping on, because I really think we need to look at our processes in place and make sure that we're the most efficient organisation for our ratepayers and our region that we can be. And I know it's a lot of hard work, and there's a lot of people working hard, and I don't want to take that away from any of the team that's here. But it's always good to know that you're part of an organisation that's doing everything they can to make sure that they're spending the right amount of money where it should be spent and not overspent. So that's my thoughts. Thank you.
Okay. Anybody else? Oh, well, happy-ish. Have you, that all were?
So next steps are, we'll have a conversation about what additional information we pull together. We're looking at a 4.95% rate target. Is that what we, just so we have some clarity?
I think it's important that at the end of the day, we want to make sure we're all over the numbers. We actually don't, I don't think anybody would say, hey, we've got to stop doing stuff. We want to do stuff to be done in the community. But it's, but then again, we have the ability to, for me, it's other fund sources of funds to just utilise bits and pieces to actually just get that feel. So and then to make sure that it's not saying, hey, we want to drop half the staff or anything silly like that. We actually realise we've got a job to do, and and we want to support the staff too. That's actually the finding how we do it is always the.
Can I ask, just so we've got some real clarity in terms of how we take this forward, is stopping at 5.6 okay, or do you want us to take a hard look at going to, for example, 4.9? That guidance would be really useful to us.
Personally, well, can I ask everyone? I'd be keen to have a look at 4.9. So can we just go around the room and just ask? You know, it doesn't just to give an indicator how people feel.
Just as a preliminary, how much additional time and effort does that impose on you, Patrick, you and your team?
So if I come back with my preferred way of proposing to address that, which is to we'd need to find another 200k. We would look really hard at the reserves and come back with a proposal based on that. Then it's a fairly straightforward exercise.
A bit too hard to get that next story, but are people comfortable with looking at 4.9? Just hands up.
If it's something we can look at, definitely look at it.
Yeah.
You know where I'm at.
He's a 0.
Well, less.
No.
Efficiency.
And Morris here, more happy.
Maybe with 5.6, the difference between 5.6 and $5 is about $5. Somebody's rate bill for $500 rate bill. More
Might be a bit more some other stuff.
it might be $20 difference or $30 difference, but it really is small.
There are quite a lot of grumbles in town with the big rate rises last year though, Morris, and
at the end of the day, we've got to come have a look at 4.9, and I'm happy to work with Rob and good information and everybody's happy with that. So
can I have a point of clarification then? Are we going to get more information so we feel like things like the vehicle policy should be in front of us again because we're budgeting just to understand it, just to see if there's any opportunities, if the assumptions, because obviously when it's budget, it's when it's important, it's an opportunity.
Patrick can work with the chair on
additional
information.
Yeah, exactly.
Is that right?
Yeah.
it doesn't take that, like I know personally, I've spent a lot of time on these budgets and looking at the reserves and that over the years. And I mean, I can ask a few little questions here and there if that works. If you want specific, things, that's fine, we can bring that information.
Just an observation, I mean, each of those policies, and as they're reviewed on a sort of a recurring cycle, they're designed to reflect what is best practice. So from memory, the vehicle and vehicle replacement policy reveals what is best practice for the organisation, both balancing capability and what is sustainable over time. So, and the reason we have policies is so that we don't have to dive into significant layers of detail every time this discussion comes up, because that would really quickly soak up our capacity to be looking at, you know, things from a big picture level. So we have this range of policies to provide kind of rules of thumb guidance on a whole range of things. There's a real risk if we start diving into each policy and second guessing it, that could quickly overwhelm our capacity to get on with the work.
If I can add in regards to reserve, we need to sit off the reserves and work out how much we actually need. And that's another discussion workshop, because there are some even disaster reserves within the liaison committees and things like that. That sometimes you go, well, do you actually need to hold that much money there? And it's community's money, you know, so, and, you know, there's just different things, local government funding and all these other things come into play around some of those reserves, so.
Yeah.
But that's probably a different day, different topic.
And my suggestion, Jeremy, is when we look at the additional information we need, it feels to me that most of that information is about understanding the reserves. The reserves include the depreciation reserves. So,
No, I think we've got a pretty good feel what we need to do. So we're happy with that. With that discussion. Do you want to just have a quick? I know we're down in fees and charges. There might be a wee bit of discussion around that. Do you need it? Or we've been sitting here for 2.5. We're not till 1 o'clock lunch. Is that right?
No, coffee. At 1 o'clock, we've got the next workshop. Help me. I'm looking at the back. 1:30, is it?
Yes, I think it's
1:30.
So we've got another time. Not.
Scheduled to go to 1.
Yeah, 1. So whether you want a quick glass of water or anything, I'm going to grab a glass of water anyway. If you want to carry on, we carry on.
Glass of water.
Yeah, 5 minutes. 5 minutes and we'll get into it.
I've just got to fuck my turn a meeting at 1, so I'll speak.
All right. Okay.
Then you yeah, that's good. Yeah, we can. So we can have. Just with this
Are we switched off or on?
Do you understand?
Nobody is actually
Right, so, next topic is fees and charges. So, look, the first thing to explain, we did an initial review of our fees and charges late last year. We've got staff hourly charge out rates that vary between $138 and $394 per hour. I had to go at reconciling those in terms of do they recover direct personnel costs and a share of the overhead for our organisation. I had a little bit of difficulty sort of reconciling back what they recover, but we went out and we scanned other regional councils and we looked at their staff hourly rates and we're actually slightly below average when we compare ourselves to other councils, and our rates aren't particularly high. Sorry, our charge rates aren't particularly high. They're not particularly low, so that they feel okay. That's important because the majority of the charges in our table are historic, and our tables are historically costed based on an estimate of staff or of staff hours input time. So I think they look okay. A conversation with a brief conversation with Wynne Williams suggests that they're defensible. I don't see us needing to do anything significant there. Our science charges. Sorry, question.
Do you want question?
We'll go to the end,
We're happy to go to the end and then.
because we'll have more by then.
Yeah. Okay. Right,
Our science charges are currently formulated to recover about 30% of the costs of running the science program through fees and charges. That's based on a reasonable historical precedent. It's modelled on similar charges by similar regional councils. And again, not proposing we do anything different there. Legal review suggests that our charges are defensible. With the local government changes that are pending, we think that pretty much retaining the status quo in terms of the basis for our charges seems like a sensible approach, but we still need to do an annual review of our fees and charges to make sure that they continue to meet legislative requirements. I'll go through that in the next few slides, but should I take questions at this point?
I'll take some questions there.
Patrick, I have difficulty with legal reviews suggest our charges are defensible. Their charges are ranging between 400 and 600 an hour. So yeah, we're okay. But the thing that we did not consider are the charges fair. I've just got one here, and it just happened to land on my desk, that to get rid of an abatement notice, which actually happened about 3 years ago, was 2 hours at $206.08.
Just to clarify,
Plus
that's
GST.
not your own, that's someone else's invoice.
It's just my invoice, there's no name at the top.
Yeah.
Well, that you're going to notice. But also the next thing comes and incident administration, 0.5 of an hour at the same rate. How does it all work? You can see old cockies, farmers, will just get their calculator out and divide all this up. And to me, it just seemed that, okay, I see in our fees and charges that we're at $211.30 an hour for senior consent, resource management, and technical specialists. I understand that you've got that in there, but I want to know, is that fair, and should we be looking at getting efficiencies from our staff more so than what we're getting now to actually reduce that per hour cost? I don't know, has that been done?
We get the efficiencies by doing it in a shorter time.
Yep.
Costs are the cost, that's the cost that's being worked out in terms of what's the cost to run a consensus festival.
Yeah.
Yeah, but that's all, how do you calculate that, Patrick?
So, so I think there are some fundamental principles here. So, to the extent that we charge through fees and charges for this sort of work, we're not we're funding the work. We're funding our FTE and our programs and our directorates partially through fees and charges, as opposed to passing that on to ratepayers as a cost that they get to bear. When we do these things, like these consents or these other activities, we're charging on the basis of an hourly rate and effort. So those are the two key inputs generally. What is the hourly charge and how much effort has gone into the activity? The hourly charge is per my earlier comment, really our hourly rates, particularly high or low compared to our peers.
I don't come at that. Not interested in that. Look at our own system and say, is it fair? Is it right? And the question I asked you was, how do you calculate that hourly rate? Do you add up the total costs of having a consent person and then divide that by the number of hours he can charge? How do you work it out?
So the rates have been struck historically in terms of the rates that we've got in the charges schedule. So and that was the earlier point I was trying to get across. In terms of trying to calculate and come back to what those hourly rates look like, I've personally not been able to arrive at those hourly rates based on personnel input costs and proportion of recoveries. You could calculate them any number of ways. So not having arrived at a basis for calculation, I've then gone and made a comparison in terms of what other councils charge on an hourly basis.
So I've got to accept it, but I'm not happy.
It probably hasn't asked Phil.
Well, I was going to just observe, I don't think it's a valid question to put to a staff member whether it's fair. That is something that our council must agree on as 12 councillors, or whoever's present. That's our job, is to agree on what's fair. The method of calculation is something that staff can comment on. And as Patrick pointed out, there's different ways you could approach that. And that's something that we can shine a light on. And if we think that should be calculated differently, that's the case. I guess my point is, for a rural business, are you suggesting that a domestic ratepayer such as myself should be offsetting or subsidising the cost of a business issue being managed on behalf of that business? Is that what you're suggesting as being a more fair situation?
Definitely not.
Okay, just want to clarify.
What I'm suggesting is that we need to, well, I don't know whether we need to be pushing as a governance body to get efficiency within our business. And I think part of that is, maybe trying to get these fees and charges down. Now, until we know how they're calculated, then we as a governance body have difficulty in making an assessment. Are they right or wrong? So I think we've got to get that information.
I've got some land here, but I'll stay.
Yeah, I agree with Alistair that these charges don't help our brand out in the field. Some people, just for receiving a report, end up with just the stock standard charge thrown at them, irrespective of how long it took. And we've got farm plans, and then farm plans turn up in here as a charge. And dare I say it, the review of the stock banking bylaw could end up with a whole lot of charges around people grazing outside of the time, which we end up clocking the ticket on. And the brand's getting pretty dirty at that stage, because you've lost the social license on this stuff in the rural community on some of what seems like extortion. And yet you're going to add to it. So fair and reasonable, I don't think some of these things are actually, and particularly when Patrick can't even come up with the formula. You had a go and you look at other regional councils. I guess the question you could say is, are other regional councils fair? Maybe we look at their numbers and see what their numbers are saying are fair to justify. But if you have to look at other councils, then that's really sad.
Well, and so looking at other councils enables us to establish whether we're being, whether our charge rates are excessive or potentially lower than they should be. It provides a benchmark. That's all it does. I could go through and I could, we could build a complex financial model that says we're looking to recover X% through fees and charges rather than rates. Based on that and based on different staff types that put effort into these activities, what should the hourly rate be to recover the cost of salaries plus a proportion of overhead, and come up with a complex approach that would tell us that the number should be something different to what it is now. That would flow through all of the fees and charges, and it would be a radical departure from what we've got now. So I've chosen to be pragmatic and to just sort of baseline against what we can see with the other councils. If we wanted to go down that path, then we'd be making some significant changes to what we've currently got.
If I can, I'll make a comment. I want to make it very clear. I do own consents. I do pay fees and charges because I know my position I'll get. If anything goes into the media, they'll start questioning why I ask questions and do things which I've done in the past. But I just want to, but we do understand getting bills, and we know we get a lot of bills in business and things like that. Just in regards to the fees, I suppose the question is, like, we generally traditionally, our rates go up, we put our fees up just the same percentage. But it all started way back, and it's just always gone up. That's generally the rates increase. It's the fees increases. And so I'm just trying to, and it is I don't personally, we're in Southern, we deal with what Southern can do. The concept of saying, well, the other councils are doing it, we do it. I don't get a good feel for that either. We want to make sure we're getting effective so we're actually, I really understand some of this. There's also, so I mean, we do look at some of the fees and that, and I understand you have to have fees, but it's also a question just how many of the overheads, where does it all fit? Understand, Phil? I don't want to don't expect anybody to pay anything from business. But then I want to make sure that it works both ways too. That's the part of it. So it's just, it would be interesting to see. It's a big beast in here to understand where all the money fits and things at times, and especially there's a lot of, where that management sits and how you allocate for that person on the ground. It is complicated, like it will be complicated to actually allocate everybody's little bit to that one FTE that's doing the consents or compliance and that. So I know it'd be highly complicated to actually understand that, but it's a relative question because some of these fees and bills are getting, they do get quite large, and for probably the farmer or whoever's got a fee, whatever fee it is, for what they see is actually being done. They don't see in the background, the engine room, what it takes to get that person there. So there's a disconnect from maybe the person that's getting the bill to, I'm not saying they should all be on $35 an hour or anything like that, but it's to the understanding what it costs to get into these amounts. So that's all I'd say.
And as a suggestion, could we go away and do some work around the spaces for the overhead allocation? I think it's the key thing here, and that might help the conversation. And at the moment, Patrick's is new to local government, and so he's come into a system. It's been changed a bit in the last 3 years, so we'll go back and work out actually how was these charges developed.
It could go the other way, that it could cost more. So that's it, but it's actually just been very clear on that.
Can I
people
make
ask those questions.
two suggestions? Look, my suggestion is those, so on the basis we benchmark those rates and they look reasonable, my suggestion would be to stay with a separate exercise.
So Patrick, I'm happy to commit to going away and having a look. I think that's what the councillors are asking.
So what I was going to suggest, and feel free to contradict me if the action has to be a different one. What I was going to suggest is we can go away and develop a model that says what would a construct look like in terms of these rates and where would that land. The issue, Rob, I think, of going away and having a look is there's no documentation about where these rates came from originally. So we're setting ourselves up to fail if we're going to go away and have a look and try and understand where they came from. We've really got to work it out logically in terms of what would it sensibly look like is the exercise that
Sorry,
You-
Chair, I was,
sorry, you,
sorry, I was
Paul, and
indicating
then
first.
you, and then Phil.
Thank you, Patrick, for the information. It's all good information, and I know there's a lot of effort being put in. And I know your response was that you work with other councils with regards to costs and everything else. But if we want to benchmark our costs, well, then the same can be said for our rates and rates increase for the upcoming year. I look at our neighbouring council in February, they reported they're going to have a zero rates increase, the ORC. And then ORC have come back and said that will be driven by cost savings, efficiency improvements, and using alternative revenue sources to keep the rates at zero. So if we look at our charging costs compared to other councils, can we also look at our rates compared to other councils? Because our ratepayers are going to be looking at that as well. So if ORC's cost recovery rates are less than ours, and they're having a zero rates increase, then we need to, if we're doing comparison, like for like, then it's an opportunity here where we really delve a little bit deeper. And I'm sure there'll be plenty to talk about.
Different councils have different assets that they can leverage off too. So, I think you and then Phil.
So Patrick, thank you for, and thank you for the work you do, but I suppose what I'm, to the point around actually coming up with some mechanisms around identifying how we get to where we get to around fees and charges, I think it's really important. Because when we look at potential frameworks going forward, you would anticipate the government are going to be looking at more cost recovery at this end of the operation or this end of business rather than less. Right. Yeah. So I think we need a degree of transparency there somehow, or whatever it happens to look like here, or something that can justify where they land. Yeah, absolutely.
That's right. This might or may not be helpful, but that idea that we look to other councils for benchmarking and we benchmark across a broad selection of them to get a kind of an average understanding. Potentially, this is speculation, potentially one of those councils may have worked through the system that you described we want to have a look at. It'd be interesting to reach out to Kahika, to the other regional councils to see, is there anyone who has got a well-developed model that they rely upon to inform their setting of fees and charges. That would be an interesting exercise, I think. And they come back with, no, actually we get by benchmarking off Southern, and Southern gets by benchmarking off them, but whether that shine a light on that issue or offered rather than reinventing the wheel, someone may have already invented the wheel we seek in this instance. Yeah.
No, it's a good point, thanks. And we've got a sector group meeting on Friday, so we could basically.
Can I make one point? I was really concerned the other day when we were talking about rate increases and someone said, if we have less from rates, where's it going to come from? And fees and charges are always going up. I'd like to think that when you talk about charging costs, that it's actually costs and not subsidising other parts of council because you can't have your rate increase. So that's why I'm interested in the methodology, and I'm not getting at you, Patrick, I just think we need more transparency over it. Because transparency allows us to understand when we often have people coming to, I think that's your point, around how these things are made up. And at times you look at it and go, well, I've got no idea how that happened, but this is really important piece to sign off. So just saying,
Right.
to give you some, I'm wanting to learn more and understand through transparency about this so we can make a better judgment call.
So can I have a go? at
Yes,
what I think here?
yeah, go.
So look, so we'll do a couple of things here. We will talk to the sector interest group, see if anyone has a valid model that they've used to land on these rates that they have, that we're comparing to. If they have, then we'll look at that model and we'll look at how that could be tailored to our organisation, put our numbers through the model, give you the transparency that you're asking for.
Yeah.
First action. Second action, if there doesn't exist a methodology, then actually we can work out a methodology that looks at the cost of our labour, that looks at the overheads, it looks at what proportion we might reasonably want to take from fees and charges versus rates, and we can build a model. And I'm happy to go away and do that as an action and bring that back and tell you what the hourly rates would look like if they were put through a model like that. The only sort of call out that I'm sort of making is if that number is radically different to what you've currently got, then it would translate to a fees and charges set of tables that are radically different to what you've currently got, because most of the tables in the fees and charges schedule, the underpinnings of them are staff time times their hourly rate. So it would drive you all the way through. And I don't think you're wanting me to come back with fees and charges that are markedly different to what we've historically had. So, well, maybe you are. I don't know.
Well, maybe we shouldn't preclude what the outcome is around transparency, though. That's my point. And then we can make a judgment.
So are those acceptable actions? So step one, find out whether there's a model in place elsewhere. Step two, if there isn't, then we'll build what the numbers would look like.
Because this is not something you're going to be able to do in a day. There is a timeline that we're working towards, and I don't know if that's going to be achievable to bring it into it's probably future looking at the whole process, but I don't want to put pressure on the system too. That there are valid questions probably to ask, but actually, can we actually bring the information into this year's annual plan? Is the other. Haven't got enough time because you're already plenty to do. So I'm just trying to understand that a wee bit too.
Patrick do some homework and we can come back.
Yeah. So yes.
But just to flag, what you're signalling is that it may be the case that we are kind of committed to consulting on existing model for this approach in annual financial year.
Yes, well, that's what I'm sort of saying, is it could help future discussions, but whether there's enough time to actually really get into it. But
Just so we're clear, do we need to consult on the fees and charges?
Annually, we usually.
To
consult.
So we're not looking to consult on the plan.
Yeah, that's a good question, Rob. The annual plan, the direction you've given me to land on 4.9 and the permission to explore the reserves. I think we can land on an annual plan that doesn't result in cutting services, and I don't think you need to consult on that. My understanding with fees and charges is you consult on those annually.
Yeah, annually, I think we do anyway. So there's actually a point that if there are adjustments or whatever, we can actually adjust. If we had information or someone else brings information, we can assess the fees and charges.
Suggest there's a certain limited window of time to do any additional homework to then inform that consultation document that goes out in time for public consultation.
Because they go out together, don't they?
Or-
Well,
and-
it'll go
and- and They wouldn't go out,
Oh, annual plan wouldn't go
No.
out, represent, yeah, the consultant, yes. Morris then also.
Well, if we are really committed to sending these out, then surely there's no urgent need to do this review. And that should be something that we do leading up to next year's annual plan with long term. That might take the pressure off you. You've got, if you think you've got enough time to do it now, but we're not going to be able to change things anyway. It seems to me it might be better to take a bit more time and do it so that we can be well armed. There'll be a lot of discussion about it. Certainly, so I sort of agree with David and Alistair when you multiply the salary by the hours and things, it really doesn't seem to add up. But there's a whole lot of complexity in there that we need to take into account.
Okay, Hayley.
Through you, Chair, if I may just address that timing issue and the need to do this. Within this review of the fees and charges schedule, it does contain some implementation of the amendments that were made to the Resource Management Act in August last year. So just from my perspective in the regulatory space, it would be helpful to have implemented those changes through fees and charges, as it would enable the team to then do those pieces of work.
Okay, thanks for that.
Thank you, Chair. Just a quick Google search of New Zealand Regional Council fees and charge average hourly rate is bringing it up at 145 to 230, 138 to 394. Sure, that's approximate 24.25, but that's just what Google says. So working on that, we just need to go back to where we are at compared to other councils. Planning manager, team leader, 210 to 230 per hour. Senior planner, technical staff, 165 to 185 per hour. So yeah, there's a whole range there. So it'd be good just to get some clarity on where we're at. Because that's what a ratepayer is going to do. Is validate what we're telling them. Thank you.
Yeah, I think that's enough guidance.
Yeah.
Yeah, but you come feedback on what gives us, if it can do or can't, and timelines and workloads and things. No, that's right.
Right, just two more slides there and then we're through. So fees and charges have been through a review process for the annual plan. Finance team has completed a review of fees and charges. They've sought manager input. They've adjusted or organised for adjustment for statutory changes. Sought legal advice on the final schedule. Legal advice has been obtained to ensure that existing principles of lawfulness, fairness, transparency and reasonableness are retained. We currently aren't proposing any fundamental shift in the council's charging philosophy, but notwithstanding that earlier conversation, and the majority of the movements are CPI based, and that's probably something worth calling out as well, actually, that our rates increase over the last few years has been a number that's been higher than CPI. Fees and charges tend to move on an annual basis at the rate of CPI, so they're not moving at the same rate as rates are increasing. Currently, the increase is 2.5% based on March 2026 year-to-date inflation, but I do want to check in terms of the final fees and charges whether we would be basing that on 30 June 2026 inflation, in which case the number would be less than 3%. So that is a process they have gone through. Can we have the next slide? And the focus of that review was updating the charging provisions to reflect current legislation, refining wording to reduce legal risk where charging powers may be challenged, and adjusting references to ensure alignment with the finance. But the headline actions that I understood from the earlier conversation is to either determine that there's a charging model in existence somewhere else, or to build one and bring back some information for you to have. And then Rob and I can work out whether that's achievable within annual plan or whether we bring that into the RTP process was the actions I took from the earlier conversation.
Any questions? Regards to that? I was actually just looking through the principles of that. I mean, that's probably the questions we're asking around fairness and transparency. That's what we're asking for, transparency. There's actually, there's good stuff there that actually clarifies some of that discussion in regards to our responsibilities as a council too. But any other thoughts on that? Fees and charges? All good? Happy? Is that us? Thank you. Thank you. Is that all?
Yep.
Sweet. We'll finish this workshop. So that's really good. Thank you very much for that. Okay, team. We'll close the workshop. We don't have to leave for all good. Thank you. We're off. We're all good.
Leave the meeting.
Good. Sorry.